Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Bracknell Forest Council's Executive. First of all, I can move to item 1. Are there any apologies for absence?
I've received apologies from Councillor Bettison.
Thank you very much. And are all those members online noted as being in attendance, as well as those of us in the room?
Yes, I can confirm that we've got Councillor Birch.
Present.
And Councillor Brunel Walker.
Present.
That's everyone joining remotely, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So in that case, I now move to item 2, which is declarations of interest. And I draw colleagues' attention to the paragraph that appears underneath that, which essentially says that if no interest is declared at the start of the meeting should arise during the context of our discussions, then please can you bring that to my attention as we move through the meeting. Thank you very much. So we then
Chairman,
move...
I have a...
Yes.
Sorry, I have an interest to declare in the item on Market Street as a member of the JV board.
Right, that's one, and that's the one that will be for commercial reasons to be taken in the part 2 in the pink at the second part of the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Brunel Walker.
Right.
Can I, Chair? I've got a similar position there, but I don't understand why we should be conflicted.
Okay. It is a... Yes, the Deputy Chief Exec has confirmed that it is a conflict of interest in the nature of the discussion that takes place. Right. Thank you very much. So, in that case, colleagues, can I take colleagues to the minutes, which appears on page 3 to 10 of the agenda? Are there any questions, or are colleagues happy to take those? It's noted. All of those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Hannah, I'm not aware of any urgent items of business.
No, none notified.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. So in that case, that takes us to item 5, which is domestic abuse strategy. And Alison, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the report. You will have had sight of it and hopefully had a chance to have a look at it. I'm just going to highlight a few key points, and then I'll hand over to Sophie Winking, who is our domestic abuse coordinator and who has authored the strategy. So this DA strategy covers a 2-year period from 2022 to 2024. And it's a refresh of the previous 3-year plan that we had in place, and it outlines our partnership response in terms of prevention, identification and support to victims, survivors and their children, and also management of perpetrators. Reducing harm from domestic abuse is a 3-year priority for the CSP and is also a key focus this year for us. The Executive will have seen the DA Safe Accommodation strategy at the beginning of 2022, and that followed the introduction of the Domestic Abuse Act of 21, specifically Part 4 of it, which spoke about safe accommodation provision in the community. But this strategy is a wider strategy, so it kind of covers that, that area, and although it's not a statutory requirement, it's really important as it sets out a shared strategic approach across all our partners. 4 priorities are included. That's prevention and early intervention, provision of services, enforcement and management of perpetrators, and also working in partnership. In terms of governance, that's undertaken by the Domestic Abuse Executive Group, which is a statutory local partnership, and that is in turn governed by the Community Safety Partnership. So that's just a brief summary, and just over to Sophie now to take us through key points of the strategy.
Thank you, Sophie. Over to you. Thank you.
Hello. So I think I've just been asked to blur my background, but I'm not very technical, and do I need to blur it?
I shouldn't worry. We can just see a lovely photograph and a bit of a sofa. Don't worry about it. You know,
Okay,
so.
all right. I think I've tried to blur it. Okay, apply. So yes, so Alison's obviously given you the outline of our domestic abuse strategy. As I said, it's 22 to 24, and the reason why it's only a 2-year one is we were delayed with kind of revising it. That was partly due to the government issuing their violence against women and girls strategy and their tackling domestic abuse plan as well. And we wanted to align it with the safe accommodation strategy, which Alison touched upon. What we will do kind of going forward is potentially link the 2 strategies together back into a 3-year strategy past 2024. But in terms of some of the activity that we're doing, Alison mentioned about the DA Executive Group, and we had a very proactive meeting this morning. Actually, it meets quarterly, and we've got all the partners that attend that. But in terms of prevention and early intervention, a big thing around this is our awareness raising, and we are coming up to what we call the White Ribbon campaign, which is next week. So keep your eyes out for some kind of comms that is coming out through the comms team and through partners. The police are doing some kind of things as well. And earlier this month, there was the first ever Men's Domestic Abuse Awareness Day that was promoted on the 2nd, I think, of November. We also do a lot of training for practitioners, and anybody's welcome to kind of join that who is working across the Bracknell Forest area. So it's so important to have practitioners and even kind of members of the public like yourself be aware of how they can help support victims should they disclose domestic abuse, but also kind of what provision we have for perpetrators, which again is one of our priorities within the domestic abuse strategy. Bracknell is very proactive in terms of what we offer to victims, children and perpetrators of domestic abuse, and there's a number of things within the strategy that you'll see in terms of our action plan as well, in what we provide. We've recently recommissioned the refuge accommodation. Berkshire Women's Aid currently holds that contract, which restarted back in September, and we commissioned them to provide what we call the IDVA and outreach work, which is for those victims living in the community. IDVA specifically supports high-risk victims, and outreach is more for medium and standard risk victims. We are looking at actually recommissioning that next year, so again, kind of watch this space in terms of the work that will come out of that. Alison mentioned about the Domestic Abuse Act, and one of those kind of key areas of work is around safe accommodation, which we are statutorily obliged to look at, and obviously we have our safe accommodation strategy as a result of that, but there's a lot of activity going on around that in ensuring that our victims have got adequate provision around safe accommodation, both for them and their children as well. Part of that work was looking at victim engagement, and we hope to redo that work early next year, looking at actually what victims want and what their experiences have been as well in the past. We do obviously work with perpetrators, not just through the criminal justice system, but within the community safety team. We have got a one-to-one perpetrator worker, and also within the family safeguarding model. So where children's social care are involved, Ollie Lamping will work directly with perpetrators, because you do need to obviously look at the targeting where the abuse is coming from. It's not just about providing support for victims. And then we have various partnership kind of meetings as well, looking at those perpetrators who are creating the most demand in terms of police visits, etc., as well. And just looking at our partnership, Bracknell has got a strong history of working in good partnership with, great engagement from a lot of different agencies, police, health, probation, etc. We have got a domestic abuse pathway that we share with professionals, trying to give them guidance around where they can refer to, what they should be doing upon disclosure. We also have partnership meetings. I touched upon the perpetrator meetings, the MATAC, but we also have MARAC, which looks at all our high-risk victims of domestic abuse. And that's monthly police-led, but it is a multi-agency group where all partners are expected to contribute. And we do obviously have domestic homicide reviews that we're statutorily obliged to have to carry out should we get a domestic homicide in the borough, but also if we get a domestic suicide, which is a suicide that we think might be attributed to what the victim potentially might have experienced through domestic abuse, taking their own life as a result. And we often get safeguarding adult reviews and children reviews where domestic abuse has played a part. So a lot of information comes out from that in terms of learning that we obviously include in our training and briefings, and try and get those out to partners to change kind of practice going forward. And last kind of thing is that, a lot of this is obviously underpinned by data and what we know about. Domestic abuse is often a hidden crime, so we do take information from and data sets from the police, from Berkshire Women's Aid are our kind of two main data sources, but we know that it's still a hidden crime. But obviously we have to kind of look at what we know through the data, and as I said, that's why it's so important with those victim survivor voices to kind of know really what people's experiences are. It's all very well looking at stats and figures, but actually we need to kind of listen to what our victims are experiencing, both in terms of their day-to-day life, but also obviously the services that we provide to them as well. So lots of activity going on, and we will continue obviously to update the DA strategy in terms of our action plan, and that action plan goes to the DA exec on a quarterly basis, and then obviously fed up to the Community Safety Partnership. I think that's everything from me.
Thank you very much. That was a really good summary and a very comprehensive report. Are there any questions for the officers? Well, I think you've answered all the questions at this stage. So, in that case, can I invite Councillor Harrison to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really glad that I actually read the strategy and the agenda before my computer died on me. So, yeah, domestic abuse can have
That's seconded, by the way, Councillor Harrison.
thank you, can have a terrible impact on families and often on children as well, not just the direct victim, but indirect victims of it. So this strategy brings forward all the different work streams and different approaches that we're taking in the council along with partners, and I commend it to the executive. I hope you adopt it, so I propose that we do.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to? Councillor Turrell.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I welcome this strategy, and it's. I think it's so important that it picks up on the new legislation, the Domestic Abuse Act 2021, that it's in line with that, so that it has maximum effect. I think sadly there's a need for it, and but I think we're doing the right thing by making sure that we're up to date in terms of in terms of what we have in place to deal with it, and to get everybody working together to do their best to combat it. Thanks.
Anyone else? Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, when you look at the alternative options, I don't think there are any, are there? So it's a thank you to Councillor Harrison and the officers for doing what's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. In seconding this, can I thank the officers and actually all our other partners who put a huge amount of work into this. Sadly, as has been said, this is a significant issue which blights many households in Bracknell Forest and other places as well. And what I particularly welcome in this strategy is really the fact that it's about raising awareness, all aspects of domestic abuse, and that's including, male-on-male perpetrators. I think it includes a lot of proactive actions, that early intervention and support, which I think is really critical in creating safe spaces and other spaces where victims actually feel they have the opportunity to be appropriately heard. We've had mention in this of the work that the officers do within the family safeguarding model, and this is really critical, isn't it, when you're sort of unpicking some of those issues in families, to create that. But I think as well as protecting and safeguarding victims, there's a strong emphasis on actually working with the perpetrators to actually ensure that perpetrators can be supported to make good decisions for their families. And I use my words very, very carefully, and having spoken to people who actually work with the perpetrators of domestic abuse, it's about that helping them understand what that they need to do to safeguard and support their families, their partners and others. And that's really, really important, because otherwise you end up in that vicious cycle, don't you, over and over again. So I think that's important. But I think as well, in the context of local government, this is a fully resourced, understood strategy. So it's not just a piece of paper. All the actions behind this are supported and resourced so they can be delivered over the years ahead. And if I take colleagues back to, the Children's Services Ofsted this summer, a lot of comment was made about the family safeguarding model. And implicit is that is the work that goes on here with our key partners, be they police and others and health and people, to make sure that we work in this way. As has been said, it's unfortunate that you have to have a strategy like this, but I think Bracknell Forest can be really confident in the work that it's doing, engagement with our partners, with those that are affected by this directly in the community, that we do all we can to try and address the impact of this. And I'm sure in line with other strategies as we go through the next 2 years and look to prepare, as been said, folding into a 3-year plan, that we'll continue to sort of reflect on what we're doing and how actually we move that forward. But I think a really superb piece of work, and one that, seconding this, I hope colleagues on the executive can support. Thank you. In that case, over to Councillor Harrison. Do you want to sum up?
I don't think we've had much debate on this.
Okay. Can I therefore ask colleagues, for all those in favour, to show, please? That's carried unanimously by those voting in the room. Thank you. So we now move to the next item on the agenda, which is, I think, the review of the contaminated land strategies, and that's, I think, to be reported to us, is it by Damien? who as if by magic appears on the screen. Damien, over to you. Would you like to introduce this item, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, members. Yes, so this is the Contaminated Land Strategy, which is a statutory requirement as part of the Environmental Protection Act 1990. The current Contaminated Land Strategy was approved by the Council back in 2012, and legislation requires that we update this periodically as part of a review every now and again. This is why you've got the paper in front of you this evening. The contaminated land regime that we have is twofold. Firstly, to undertake an assessment of the area within the borough for contaminated land through a strategic approach. And then secondly, where contaminated land is identified, making sure that it doesn't pose an unacceptable risk to health or the environment. And ensure that the contamination is remediated to reduce that risk to an acceptable level where we have identified contaminated land. The proposed updated document that you've got in front of you this evening, members, consists of minor layout changes and updates to references where legislation has been changed. There are no significant changes to the Council's overall strategy from the 2012 document, so it is literally a kind of light touch, refresh, reviewing the strategy, making sure it's up to date and relevant in line with today's legislation. So happy to take any questions if there are any from members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damien. Colleagues, are there any questions for Damien? Okay, thank you very much. I think, Councillor Turrell, does this fall to you to move?
I'm happy to move it, Chairman, and to...
We think it's probably John Harrison's. Apologies for that. So, John, are you happy to move and Chris happy to second? Oh, an outbreak of consensus. Apologies for that. Councillor Harrison, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sometimes we have overlapping responsibilities, I think, so it's hard to tell where things sit, Chairman. But this is, as Damien has told us, it's a very technical report. It fulfills our duty to keep our policy up to date, and it's an important thing that we do. It's a statutory duty, and therefore I recommend to the executive that we adopt this update.
Thank you very much. Does the seconder wish to add to that? Just to observe that it's good that the document that was approved in 2012 has only needed minor changes, so that speaks volumes for the approach that the council has adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to? Yeah. I just want to say, just really appreciate again all the work that's gone into this, because managing contaminated land is a really, really significant issue. You only have to look at the history where there have been significant issues with development and reuse of land, where previous contamination has been there, and the consequences that can blight those sites for a long time. And I think it's becoming increasingly important as the technology and science behind actually identifying levels of contamination in land gets ever more sensitive, and the fact that we have a robust and strong strategy that stood the test of time, and for what you said, Councillor Harrison, this will move forward is really important. So no, fully supportive of this. Do you wish to sum up at this stage, Councillor Harrison? Okay.
Thank you. Nothing to add, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So would all those in favour please show? Thank you. That is carried unanimously by those that have a vote in the room. Thank you. In that case, we now move to item 7, which is an update on the SEND written statement of action. And I think, Gronya, that's for you to introduce. Yes, Gronya, that's for you to introduce. Thank you. Over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, colleagues. As indicated, what you have in front of you is an update on our progress in delivering the actions agreed within our written statement of action relating to SEND services. And colleagues will recall that earlier this year, the executive approved the content of the written statement of action with an ambitious programme of work to be undertaken over a period of time, over 110 actions included in the document. That report, that written statement of action, was agreed by Ofsted in its first submission without change, with noting though the level of challenge that was going to be required in a number of areas, including the delivery of OT assessments in a timely way. So the document was agreed. What we agreed with our executive, with yourselves, was that we would come on every quarterly report to Department for Education and NHS England, that we would provide an update on the progress of the action plan with the relevant feedback. And the document you have is the slide deck that we used with the with Department for Education and NHS England in our recent monitoring visit. Just wanted to highlight as well, Chair, that in moving forward, improvement area 4, you will see the whole issue about, which we know about, in terms of capacity locally of special school places. And just to confirm that the applications or bids have been made, taking advantage of recent opportunities, Department for Education, to apply for funding for 2 special schools in the borough. In terms of when we will have any outcome, it's expected in March and April. So obviously, as you would expect, our plan Bs and alternatives are also being developed at the same time. Rather than talk at length and repeat what's in the report, Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Gráinne? Okay, thank you. Well, I can say with some confidence I'm moving this recommendation. Is that seconded, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Turrell. Can I thank Gráinne for the update and to share with colleagues that, of course, this is the first really significant external monitoring visit that we've had following the inspection and the initial putting together of the action plan. And as we've made clear right from the start as a council, and as clear I've made as the portfolio holder responsible for this area, that we are working hard and at pace to improve the service, not just in terms of the day-to-day operation, and you know, we now have a really good interim head of SEN who I think is making significant strides in terms of bringing this forward, but also particularly in the experience of parents and families, working hard to improve communication. We put a bid in to make sure that we can secure the best possible local, alternative provision that we can. But I think very significantly in this, and to give that sort of external audit, is this is the DFE coming in and commenting on the progress that we have made so far. We are at early stages. I think that's very, very clear. But what I think colleagues can see here is that the DFE believe that we have the basics right, that we're moving in the right direction. We're working closely with parents and carers. As has been said here, there are members of the Parent Carer Forum where we have articulated concerns as well, but there are others who've expressed that they feel things are improving. This is an early stage, but I think hopefully what colleagues can see is there is a commitment to get this right. But I think it's equally fair to say that when you are in this stage of an improvement plan, not everything is going to be right to begin with. So there's absolutely no complacency. There's a razor-like focus on this, but we recognise in the months ahead as we move to providing the service that we will all be proud of, that there will be things that go well, but there will still be things that go less well, and that we're working together on this. But where I think there have been significant benefits is, one is that compared to when the inspectors came in, that they've identified that in priority area 9, that we're making better use of advice and guidance, that that's more readily available and things like this. I have seen firsthand where there has been an improvement in terms of elements of the communication we have with parents and carers. There is a better understanding of what we need to do in terms of alternative provision, and that I think that overall we've gone about this in a very clear, structured way, recognising that we can't get everything right to begin with, and that we've been very open with the DFE that some of the things, including greater opportunities for some children with additional needs, including older children, are things that we will need to work on as we go through the process. This improvement plan is resourced, it's supported, and I am confident that in the short to medium to longer term we will see the necessary improvement. And I'd like to put on record tonight my thanks to all the officers who operationally handle this service day by day, the managers, to Gráinne, the director, and the other officers in the council, our partners for the way they're coming forward, but also for the openness, honesty and frankness of parents and carers who shared with us their experience, because it's that interaction which actually helps us further improve the service. And as we work through, I am confident, based on the external feedback, the work that's gone on, the work that scrutiny's done, that everyone else has done on this, that we have a positive framework to move forward, and that we will then be able to report back, hopefully in February next year, on, fingers crossed it goes ahead at the right time, the second monitoring visit that shows where we are moving on this. But I just want to leave colleagues with the message that there is no complacency, there's an absolute focus on this, because we recognise that we will not be content until we are delivering the quality of service for the SEND service in Bracknell Forest that we are for children's services more broadly. So I think that focus stays there. That's my introduction there. Does the seconder wish to speak, or does any other colleague wish to speak at this stage? Councillor Turrell.
I'm quite happy to endorse the comments that you've made, Chairman, and just to say that this is a very clear setting out of those first steps on this journey, and I welcome the hard work and stepping up to the challenge here that's been necessary.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turrell. Any other comments? Okay, in that case, I'd like to put the recommendation to the executive. With all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried by all colleagues in the room. Thank you. In that case, we now move to the exclusion of public and press. The text is written below item 8. Can I have that motion proposed and seconded, please? Thank you, Councillor Torres. Is that seconded? Thank you very much. Councillor Mrs Hayes?
I'm leaving the meeting.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And to note that Councillor Hayden is leaving the meeting. Thank you.
As is Councillor Brunel Walker.
As is Councillor Brunel Walker, who is leaving the meeting as well due to the express conflict of interest. Thank you both for attending the meeting. Thank you. And we'll now wait to confirm when we have gone into confidential session.